everyone. Welcome to Indulge podcast with me, Priyambada. We have with us Shahana Goswami and Kunaal Roy Kapur, who are cooking a recipe. But what's it about? It's about love, loss, and legacy in their short film My, which is currently being screened at the JIO MAMI Film Festival. The film is all about food, so we ask the actors about their complex relationship with food, the times when life has brought them on the crossroads, fighting body image issues, and lots more.
Now I believe.
So I was given the screeners of the film, but short of time, so I couldn't watch it. I'm planning to watch it today. But the
Yeah.
storyline seemed very heartwarming, and it kind of dives one into nostalgia because it has lots of emotions from what I could see from the preview, and it's a very simple storyline which touches on the consciousness of people, but not being very preachy, is what I get. So let us know what grabbed your interest in the project, and it's a very simple storyline. So despite of it not being very loud on the face in terms of acting or set design or loud music and all, what are the simpler things that attracted you the most?
Well, when Milind, the director, was thinking of casting me, he sent me the script, and generally, and especially for a short film, I generally have I sit and discuss it. Then I try and figure, I'm thinking of how I can do things with this. But once I read the script of my, I was just like, I didn't have anything to say to Milind because it was just all there. I was like, yeah, this is great. Let's just shoot it because it was just right, in the sense that it wasn't too, as you said, it wasn't too forced. The emotions were just the right balance, and it was almost like preparing a good meal. Like you have the right amount of namak, the right amount of masala. It was just right, and I think what attracted me was the character. Mostly who's a character who's quite obsessed and quite stuck in his ways, um, and and he's not able to move on in life, and he's kind of his own obstacle. And we have this character of Mona who comes in, and she's like a breath of fresh air in his world, um, and his sort of him being his own worst enemy. It's that kind of story. So I think what attracted me mostly was firstly my deep connection with food myself, and my deep connection with memories and food, and how big a role it's played in my own life. Like, it's been my biggest friend and my worst enemy. um how food gives you your self image, and it can manipulate you, and how you get manipulated by food rather than you manipulating food. So sometimes it's this battle that you have with your tongue and with your heart and with your stomach. It's not always hunky dory with food. We all think
Yes.
that it's, oh, I love food, but there are times when your love turns into hate, and your love turns hate for yourself, and hate for your own self image. So I'm saying it's such a complex relationship that we have with food, and that's what this film kind of gets into a little bit. It's like, um it's important, but it's, like, how where do you put this in the scale of your own personality? So all
Yes.
these many little things that I think that he's squeezed into this little short film, and
Hmm.
each one of these trains and threads can be a separate story almost, but he's managed to compress it into this nice little dense thing, and kept the characters really quite, um colored them in really beautifully. So that's what attracted me to the story. Yeah.
So very well articulated. I would say I've never heard about food and personalities, and so much depth in what he has told about the movie. So what about you, Shahana? And it seemed like now it's not that simple. It's pretty much complex, but maybe deconstructed very well.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's
Yes.
also Millen's forte. If you see any of his work, he's a great writer, and because he's a great observer of life, and he's a great executor of what he writes. And all his writing has a lot of layers in it, and the layers are not there, they are there simultaneously, so you have to absorb it as you do in life. When you're experiencing life, you are like we're having this conversation, we are feeling each other's energies, we're reading between the lines, we're also absorbing the little gems that come from someone's words and their thoughts and ideas. It's all happening simultaneously. So even in the film, having watched it again recently, you'll see even little things like the conversations that are happening in the background are also very pertinent in Milin's films. That's how much he thinks of, and they're exactly the kind of conversations that would happen in that setting. So it's not like he's just trying to randomly force a message through the background conversation, but it's the exact conversation that would happen in that setting. So he has this ability to create a very real world with a lot of detailing, but it feels very effortless. It feels almost like it's been documented. And that's, I mean, I've worked with him before. So for me, in simpler words, all the things that Kunaal said were obviously there, but I already knew that. Like Milind is one person I will blindly do anything with, because I trust his writing and his mind and his ability to direct in that kind of way and to create characters. And my second point of intrigue was Kunaal, because Kunaal and I have known each other, we've never acted together. And I thought he was great for this part, and I thought it was a beautiful part to be able to play off, a wonderful, like it's a dance between these two characters towards the end of the, from the middle half of the thing, and it's two very opposing energies dancing, And
so what you discovered about Kunaal, anything new that you discovered while working with him? What kind of rapport you shared?
He's even more versatile than you would think he is, because he's like, I mean, I was saying this in another interview, that it's a part that's, when you see the character, it seems like you're not doing much, because that's the nature of the part, that he's a bit lethargic, he's very slow moving, he speaks softly, slowly, he's a bit grumpy. It's not, and Mona on the other hand is much more like vivacious, energetic, jumping around, moving. But that's easier for me to do because it's so much closer to who I am, and what he was playing is so far removed from who he is. But to make that seem natural is a lot of effort that seem effortless, So so that was the fun part, to be able to play with that, and then to also find the characters finding a middle ground when they actually do start, when they're in a personal space, when they're cooking together, when they're doing, then there's a little bit of both sides merging into each other. You see,
so you guys cooked anything on set together, like a full-fledged dish?
Full-fledged dish? I mean, come on, this is filmmaking, darling. We're not, there's not that much luxury of time to actually cook something.
But you guys cook anything in real, like Kunal's interest is there in food. Do you also prefer cooking something on your own?
I love cooking, but I love eating more than I love cooking. I love being fed. I'm a great connoisseur of food, so anybody wants to try anything and feed me, I'm always happy. But I have spurts of wanting to cook, and I then obsessively will cook for some periods. But largely, I would say I'm much like Mona. I'm a taster, and I have a great ability to taste food.
A great eater.
Great eater.
A great eater. Yeah. So, Kunaal, tell us, what was the last dish that you cooked and people actually loved it, and you also loved it?
I cook whenever I get the opportunity. I cook. So the last thing I made properly was burgers. I made burgers. People did like the burgers. We had a barbecue. So I mean, although there isn't, like, the burgers are pretty straightforward. It isn't like some very hardcore cooking, but that was the last thing I made. But I can cook pretty much anything. I can bake. I can cook. I can, and I make breakfast very often at home.
Wow.
I mean, every day that I'm there.
One has to be really interested into cooking as an art form to actually dive into its world. I especially stay away from it because I see if you're not interested in cooking, you will not do a good job. It will be very mundane, and the food will also be mundane. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like things like the way I like them, like especially breakfast, like I have a very particular way in which I like my eggs, or I like or whatever it is. So if someone else does it, it isn't just
Your
right.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little,
That's
Sometimes
why
we
I'm
like preparing our tea or our coffee our way only. We don't even like
ah
tasting
wait.
somebody else's
Yeah,
way
yeah. Like,
to get it.
I,
exactly.
Yeah.
I beg to disagree. I'm surrounded by good cooks who give me things my way, but cooked by them.
Then you are lucky with the cooks, because
I'm
cooks
very
are
lucky.
very difficult to find.
Absolutely. I'm very
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys, have been in the industry for quite some time now, and you have played both the lead characters as well as tertiary characters also in the films. So does I just always wanted to ask this thing to you guys, that does the length of the role matter to you, and to what extent? Like, how you guys prioritize, even if the role is not that big, but it's giving you the exposure. How you decide that you want to take it up?
I don't think that it's not really the length. I think it's for me, it's more about what does that character have to do. The length is not really the thing. It's about what kind of a graph they have, what kind of contribution to the story. At this point in my life, I think it's important for me to I won't play a part that has no contribution to the story, because that doesn't interest me. Yeah, however interesting a part, unless I'm doing it for a friend or something, just for the laugh. But as a performer, as an artist, I am not interested in anything that is not to
Substantial enough.
the storyline. And for me, my intrigue is based on what's new that I can explore through this character. So these become two crucial parts. The other thing that I try to explain to people is that again, because I've been acting for a long time, um, your desire to grow and learn is in terms of trying to participate more and and to have that sense of collaborativeness with the rest of the team in a bigger way. So in our film language, we say that all the different heads of the departments, we call them HODs. The head of department, whether it's the camera, whether it's the the production design, the makeup, the costume, they all work together creatively in creating the vision of the director. I wish to feel like an HOD. As long as I feel like a head of a department, and that does not mean that I have to be the main character, but I have to feel like my character as an actor is important enough to feel like an HOD, because that's my interest as an artist, to feel I'm a collaborator. If I'm not a collaborator, then I've been through that journey already. Now for me, I need to feel like I'm more involved in the creative aspect of it. So that,
Especially in the very recent times, the kind of roles that you have done, they have touched all the sides of a spectrum, like from funny, serious to greedy, lusty, witty, all shades of gray. And especially for a woman in the industry to play grayer roles always comes with a lot of judgments from society. I still remember when we have, films like Thappad or Pink, and we are sitting in a dining room with the family. If a woman is shown in a gray shade, the family is the first one to point and judge her and put fingers on her, and we still have to explain them. See, times have changed. She has not done anything wrong. What's wrong with having her own agency? All of those discussions still happen in families.
correct.
So, do you feel as a woman it has become a little bit more easier to play grayer shades, and families or audiences are accepting more towards women playing darker roles, or they still come with a lot of judgments?
I think it's a lot to do with how you weave a character into a story. So if a story, like the grayness, I've always said that the term gray always used to baffle me a little bit, because what is gray? We always say gray because we made these
We are great. We all are great.
it's basically people with shades of natural human tendencies. That's all, and it depends on if which part of the storyline you're catching them at. So I think in that sense, when characters are well written, then you don't question the intention and the things. So if you are invested in the character, then as we do in human life, when we deal with our parents, when our parents deal with us or our loved ones, it's not like we don't see the bullshit in what they're doing or what we are doing, but we are forgiving of that. We are accepting of that because there is a larger part of investing in that person and in their journey and everything else that they bring. So similarly with a character or with writing, if you are invested in the character, which is part of the good writing and the storytelling, then the judgment part doesn't come. But if you've written a character for it to be judged, then of course that judgment will come. Or if you've written a character just for it to be salacious or to be something that is, there for a purpose of creating some kind of a
Yes.
upheaval, then of course it's going to create that upheaval. But I think that's the part. So and having said that, people will still have judgment. I living my life the way I'm living, much as there is a lot of acceptance to it, there will also be people who will judge the kind of life I live. But the point is that much openness is okay for people to have different opinions. But largely, I think the focus is now more about creating characters, not about एक hero होना चाहिए, एक villain होना चाहिए, एक vamp होनी चाहिए. It's not that. It's about creating a larger, more nuanced storytelling and not bracketing the characters into good, bad, ugly, grey, dark, shade, light, whatever. They're human. As long as they're human and real in their responses and reactions in the story, that's what works.
Kunal, one thing I wanted to ask you especially is most of the characters that you have appeared in, they are very comical, light-hearted ones. Has anybody told you that you have a great comic timing in real life also?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
I
I get
assume
that.
you have somewhere. I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, it would be difficult. I mean, if you had it only on screen and not in real life, it would be a little strange. I guess it's a different kind of humor. Like I think depending on the character, as long as you know, okay, this is how this character is funny, or these are his flaws, and this is what we're going to make fun of, or or this is the tone of the film. But I think there are different kinds of funny. And I think a lot of the times I'm not funny, like I don't have jokes. I don't, like, I don't have gags in that sense. So I think a lot of the time the funny comes from the writing, the funny comes from the camera, the funny comes from the art. It doesn't necessarily come from the character. I think the moment, the writing of that moment is what's funny, and then I'm just the guy who goes and executes it. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't land. And I think most people could do it. It's just that that because I was known, or because I became popular with a comic thing, more and more people started creating comic situations for me. It's not that I'm super funny. I mean, whatever. I'm a guy, but I
taking away from your innate sense
no
of
no
humor.
no. It's there. But what I'm saying is that to create something funny, not the
Yes,
person who's funny. It's the whole thing. Like, you like, the writing has to be funny. And then you get a funny moment. I think, So so that's why there are different tones of funny, and I do get a lot of funny roles. Yeah, but like
What
even
kind of
this
roles
film.
do you want to do? Like, as you mentioned, when somebody does one kind of role in a genre, which is like really amazing for the audience, people tend to give them more projects of those kind, and which
Yeah,
somewhere leads to typecasting as well. So do you
right.
want to like discover what kind of roles you more want to discover, and any side of yours that you felt is still untapped and you would want to show it more of?
Yeah, I'm happy to do any genre. I'm quite genre agnostic. That way. But even within humor, I think that especially, like, say, the tone in this film um is they're funny moments. It's funny. I find a lot of the film funny. It's just that it's a different kind of funny. It's also sad, it's also touching. um so I like films that actually do break out into humor, and then they can get emotional, and then they can, like, maybe they make some sort of observation as well. So yeah, this kind of tone really appeals to me. So as far as doing other genres, I really wouldn't mind doing any genre. It just depends on the writing, the director, the co-actors. Like for me, just being doing a film with Milind. Once I met him, and then once he told me Shahana is going to be in it. Again, you have someone who, you've watched her work, uh, like, and I've literally seen her move into the city and do this work and be on this journey. So I've been like this kind of eyewitness to her, like just like a fly on the wall who's seen this person grow, and become this, fabulous actor that she is. And so for when he said Shahana, I was like, oh my god, that's great, because I've known her, we've met right since like way back. And it was very exciting for me, because when you see an actor who you feel, I mean, that would be great to just, like, just bounce off that person, and so much of your own character comes from that other person's reaction to your character, right? Like, I mean, when you say a line, one thing is the way in which you say it, the other is depending on how the other character responds to what you say. The audience judge that character, right? So I'm saying, so just to think that, oh, you have made a character alone is a complete, it's impossible to do it without the help of your co-actor, and without the help of, I mean, entire team, and that's why I rely so heavily on costume and makeup. And even for this film, like, he needed a bit of a paunch, and I had lost weight, so we had to, like, kind of do that. So I'm saying, so all these elements come together and create a character. So I like that process, so now whether the genre is comedy or whether it's thriller, I mean, like, whether it's horror or whatever,
So
I
you were mentioning about weight also, and I just saw one of the podcast of yours where somebody was asking you that you have lost weight. This is the kind of body image question that we usually refer to women, where they are said that you have to look a certain way, or you have to be
right,
of a certain age or color or weight to get a certain project. But is it
right.
equally difficult for men too? Because you have mentioned your relationship with food also, and then there are questions related to weight.
Yeah,
So this is the first time I'm asking this to a male actor.
it's not half as difficult.
If you're
I mean,
weight conscious or not.
as a guy, you get a lot more, I think it's far more judgmental for women than it is for men. If I was very large or if I was very thin, I'd just get different kinds of roles. I don't think it would, like, especially if it was supporting roles or even leading roles. But I think that for women, it's much, much harder. Much harder. I don't think there's really any comparison in terms of the judgment and the scale of the. I mean, of course, personally, you want to look a certain way, you want to be healthy, that's a separate thing. But I'm saying in our industry professionally, it's it's far more brutal. I mean, there's no comparison. It's much, much harder, uh, in terms of judgment on women
But
and
have you
the way
ever been told that you have to look a certain way to get a project?
Yeah, sure. For Delhi Belly, I had to put on like 18, 20 kilos for that. So they said that, I mean, that's what the terms were, that, you need to put on a lot of weight for this. So I did put on a lot of weight. Then for another project that I did, they said, it's all good, but you need to lose about 10 kilos or 12, whatever, 10. So I ended up losing, I had about 4, 5 months. So I lost some weight for that project. Um, so,
I'm,
but that is
just
the
wondering why, uh, whenever somebody puts on a lot of weight, they are only given comical or funny or light-hearted characters. Why can't they do something serious and even more
No,
substantial?
you have like say recently, for instance, The Whale. I mean, it's a dead serious film, but he had to put on a lot of weight. It wasn't a comical role. So you have instances where actors do put on a lot of weight, uh, just to to look a certain way for a character. Um, Amir Khan doing it for Dangal. I mean, he put on a lot of weight to play an older man in his later years. Then he lost it all and got fit. So you do have instances where people do put on a lot of weight to look a certain way for a character. It's not always for comic reasons. In the comic space, I think the person is already pretty plump, and then they're just casting that person and stereotyping that. But I don't think it's not generally.
To wait.
Yeah.
So, actors' life is always full of ups and downs, and you guys having had your whole share of doing different kind of characters over a considerable period of time, I'm sure that must have been times when you felt that there is a dry spell in the career, or you have felt lost, or you are at the crossroads where mind and heart is not in sync. Tell us a phase of life where this has happened and how you have coped with that.
Shahana,
Shahana, you say.
you
I think for me, it was mainly, I started off very early and very suddenly, and before I could even really understand what was going on, I was fully into films. So I don't have the typical story that people have of finding it, the struggle of the beginning. That didn't happen. And it was quite the opposite. And then I think I always felt unworthy of where I was because I didn't struggle. And we have so many ideas of how we must struggle and work very hard to get very good, otherwise it's nothing. So, and I lived with that, and because I'm an untrained actor and all that, so I was constantly feeling of like I'm not supposed to be here. And then I think there was a phase which was more like what I call a growth spurt. I think I got to a point, it was towards my late 20s, like maybe 28, 29, where I started feeling a little jaded in my life in Bombay at that time. It was not specifically to do with the films, but I started feeling like I needed a change. Like I was going through a growth spurt where I wanted to absorb and learn, and the city and the world around me at that particular point was not providing that to me. I was not stimulated in a way enough. So, and I was doing a lot of independent films at the time. So I decided to move countries because I felt like I don't need to live here. I can come and work whenever I need to. And the last few projects I'd done, I hadn't even worked. They were not Indian productions. They were not shot in India. So, so I moved to Paris for 4 years. I mean, which ended up being 4 years. But so when I moved there, it was really wonderful. And I was going through this absorption period and learning a new language, learning a new culture. And it was all very wonderful. That was a long process. I thought I'd move to New York first. Then, I realized I don't particularly like the US. So I didn't want to move there. Then Europe was always on my mind. But I was like, I'll have to learn a new language. And then I visited Paris and I had a few friends who were in the industry also in Paris. And then Paris was close enough to England. I found an agent in England. So I said, okay, this might be. Paris is also the biggest film industry in Europe. And so that was one of the reasons why I decided to stay. And then I loved living there and I learned French and it became a wonderful experience spiritually, in terms of my soul, in terms of growing as a human being.
Feels like Eat, Pray and Love is based on you at this point of time. You are Julia Roberts.
Yeah. But that's when the struggle towards the last 2 years of my being there. And I don't think it had anything to do with me living over there, because I was getting a whole bunch of auditions and offers, but it was as if the universe wanted to give me the feeling of struggle. कि तुमको चाहिए ना थोड़ा स्ट्रगल ले क्योंकि हमारे पास ज्यादा टाइम नहीं है, जल्दी से ले उसके बाद आके काम करना है. तो then I nicely experienced that feeling of struggle, and the struggle was more to do with not getting the kind of work I would want. I am still very grateful and I feel very lucky that I've constantly and consistently always got work. It's just that I have been picky and I'm particular because I'm very instinctive in my choice and I don't make that choice from a calculated perspective. So, but in that phase, there was lots of things that almost happened, then got cancelled, shelved, auditions that I came really close to, then didn't get. And that process as an actor is very tiring, where the hope goes up and then it comes crashing, and your hope goes up and it comes crashing. And then, then I was, running out of money. Running out of money means thankfully I have a family that can still help me and support me, and they did. But it's a mental thing of suddenly feeling like, what am I doing with my life? And then I think in that period, but those are great moments because it allowed me to free myself of, it was a moment of just saying, okay, so if it's not this, then I'll do something else in life, and that's okay. I know I have enough faith in myself and my ability to live that I can manage. So that's okay. But I don't want to compromise on the kind of stuff that I want to do. So I could have easily come back to India and done work that would have paid the bills and that would have got my me back in the business and in the top, but it would have not satisfied me. It would have sucked the soul out of me, and I didn't want to do that. And then, then when universe was like, "Chal, abhi time is up, you have to come back," then suddenly everything switched, and there was 1.5 years of me working non-stop before until the pandemic.
Yes.
And then it's just a role after that. So it was, but that period was, I think, an important period to feel that sense of detachment, a healthy detachment, from the workspace, where you stay in a space of trust, in the trust of your own choices and your desire to keep a certain quality check on yourself. And it gets hard to do it when you're, when you're feeling like, should I just do it? Should I just do it? And it happened to me, I must say, that there were certain projects that I said yes to, even though I didn't want to do it. And then the universe took it away from me because they're like, nahi. इतने भी desperate दिन नहीं आए हैं कि तुमको ये करने पड़ेंगे. Don't worry, we will take it away.
Sometimes we need to listen to the signs. That's true. Yeah. What about you, Kunaal? Did you ever felt that you were lost somewhere in mind and heart?
Every few months you go through it, and you, if I had studied this, if I had done that, if I had done this, if you keep thinking of alternate careers, professions, what business investments. You start watching, where invest money and how to become rich, and like all those things. You start, your YouTube feed changes a little bit because you start thinking
and then self-help books keeps on piling up.
Yeah,
all those
yeah. Some other podcasts on other careers. No, but honestly, there are those moments, and it comes every few months and every this thing. But I guess you just and you never know, like you never know how long this is going to last. Luckily, I feel that, like, I'm looking forward to physically changing and becoming older, and because I know that then I'll get different kinds of roles, and I'll get and it's not like acting stops when you're, like, past your 40s, or you can act till whenever. I mean, there are older men roles, there are middle-aged men roles, there are I'm looking forward to doing different kinds of roles. Maybe age will help the breaking out in certain ways and doing different things. So I'm actually, I'm quite comfortable with that, and I know that this profession, and I knew right from a young age. I mean, I've been acting since I was 15, 16, so I'm quite used to it. I'm quite used
the
to
ups and downs, and understanding that it will stay
down,
dynamic
not knowing.
throughout the life. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, and I think that even as a family, you need to get used to the fact that there's going to be up phases, down phases, and it's okay. It's not as now it's the life you've chosen, and it's just going to be that way.
But have you ever felt that you should be in some other business or some other profession? And what was that profession that you felt?
Very often when it's like 3 in the morning and you're like, I remember dangling off the edge of a building on a harness, and I was thinking, like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm dangling off the edge of this building for some shot in a movie. I'm thinking, hey, if I had finished my graduation and if I had done that course, maybe in architecture or something, I wouldn't be doing this right now. There are moments when I'm swimming in, like, in a somewhere in the distant suburbs of Mumbai, and I'm like swimming in this, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing over here? I should have done something else with my life. So every few these things, especially when you're like, when you're in a tight spot, those thoughts do come to you. But it is the fun of it also. It is the excitement of it. It is the fact that it's 3 in the morning and you're doing something weird, and your life has brought you to this strange point, which also,
and at least somebody has done something in their life that has made them realize that, because that shows that one is not stagnant, right? They are trying new things and then
Yeah.
discovering, okay, this is not working. Maybe I
Yeah.
should have done that. Even to reach the spot, somebody has to do something. No, so that's
And
great.
that moment might end up not being entertaining to people. People might not even see that film. People, it might not even, but you spent your time this way. This is how you spent your time doing this craziness, dressing up and walking across streets in Europe, doing all sorts of crazy things. So this is how you're spending your time and your life. But it's fun. And I think that it is ultimately the joy of doing these different things that keeps us in it,
And
I guess.
always the journey of how far we have come than the destination. I think that's
Yeah,
something that we all need to recall again and again in our respective professions, especially the ones which are
correct.
very dynamic and creative, because nobody is going to give us the motivation, to wake up. It's only
Yeah,
us. So thank you
absolutely.
so much for talking, and we were really short of time, but it was a lovely chat. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
you.
Very much, everyone.
Thank you.